Welcome to Business Talk Sister Gawk. I'm Becca, and today's podcast episode is how to build an indoor billboard advertising company. And I am super excited about this. I have Roger Pooka with me today, and I think you should pronounce your real last name as well.
The real last name is Pogorelc. Yeah, it's not the easiest, but it's very Iron Range.
Okay. Yeah. So you have started a couple of these companies so far. Is that true?
Yes. That was one of my second entrepreneurial venture, I would say, was moving cold turkey. Well, not cold turkey. I played a little hockey in Billings, Montana, but when I was playing hockey, I was hanging out with my teammates and such, and they were from Minnesota, Alaska, North Dakota, etc., all the players, and then we all left, right? So I kind of parachuted back there in 2001, and yeah, that's what I wanted to do, I guess, and the market was pretty wide open, so that's kind of why we chose there. So yeah, started, and then we'll talk about it later, but then we ended up down in, my wife and I in Chicago doing the same thing.
Yeah. Okay. So tell me, what is an indoor advertising or billboard company? Okay. Tell me about that. What does it look like?
Sure. So what most people where most people will see them would be in like restrooms of like nightclubs, bars, restaurants. So that's where most people would see them. But any type of even a wallscape, someplace indoors. Mm-hmm. I've seen at like Minnesota Wild Games are starting to do a lot of larger wallscapes of ads. Some of the technology with stickers. I mean, you can just make a big sticker now instead of like framing stuff or it being paper and able to be torn. You put this matting down. So any kind of advertising that, even airports. I mean, airports are, I think the title a little bit different. I think they call it airport advertising, but technically it's indoor, right? So it's anything anything you put a roof over, you can call it an indoor billboard.
Okay. And so, like, did you do a lot of, like, framing of things in? Like, were you doing printing and bringing them? Or what? How did you figure out, like, this is the system we're going to use, and what did that look like?
Right. Okay. So I guess that there's a lot of backstory to that. So the whole industry category was kind of brought nationally by actually a couple of Haven guys, Jim Arbonis, the late Jim Arbonis, and Tony Jacobson, who's still in the game today doing a lot of digital stuff. And so they were they're graduates of Haven High School where I graduated, and there was, teachers used to kind of mention them, and they were kind of like these business legends. So I always paid attention when I was somewhere, because at that point in time when I was a teenager, there weren't indoor billboards across the range. There were a little bit in Duluth, but there were a lot in the city. So something I paid attention to. So I saw these frames and, these ads in there, which were incidentally paper. So I always kind of paid attention. I was just ready to do, I taught school 1 year, and I was just ready to do something different. And so that was kind of when I thought, this is what I'm going to do. And like I said, I did some research, and I found out that Billings was a market that it didn't exist. It was like when I was a teenager, it didn't exist on the Iron Range. Well, when I was 26 years old or what have you, it didn't exist in Billings, Montana. So that's how I chose Billings. But yeah, so then I paid more attention. I actually had a buddy that worked for, at that time, it was called AJ Indoor. And he's like, oh yeah, he's these frames, and you put a piece of plexiglass and, that kind of thing. And then I didn't print the ads myself. I subbed that out, but went to a print shop, and, there'd be like an artist that would create the ads and then print the ads and then post them up and put them in frames. Like I said, that's the way it was done then. But like I said, as technology, I know when Jim and Tony started the ads, the way technology was back then, the ads, they were paper, but they were black and white. Oh. And a lot of the frames were in glass, which could be kind of a danger. You think of a nightclub and maybe, people have a little too much to drink or something, and you got glass, so as things change, like I said, now in a lot of cases, it's just a giant sticker. It's just, you can just a nice big sticker and just, direct onto the wall. So things, and like I said, there's a lot of digital now, a lot of digital boards. So technology and times will kind of change things.
Okay. Yeah. So when you went out to Billings, what did you do to get started? Like, how much did you have to invest right away? And how did you get your first customers for ads?
Sure. Okay. So the investment was a good thing. It was pretty small. Like I said, I knew that going in, if I was successful, I'd have to buy some frames and, go to an artist, pay them to create the advertisement, and then get some printing done. So the startup was very minimal. when I was playing hockey there, I was playing what's called junior hockey, and they set you up with families to live with.
Okay.
Because they're a bunch of 16, 17 to 20-year-old kids, and they, the
Probably
teams-
don't want you going
they
out
pro-
by
Yeah,
yourself.
they're like, they don't want to have an apartment full of 18-year-olds. So,
Yeah.
so they set you up with families, and I had a great family there, and so I'd contact them ahead of time, said, hey, I'm looking at doing this. Would you care if I just came and rented my own bedroom back? And they had several children, and so they had a couple of them had already moved on. Like, yeah, your bedroom's available and what have you. So I had the kind of the place to stay covered. My wife was still here on the range teaching in Mountain Iron at the time, so I knew I was just going to kind of go out and see. And so, yeah, so day one was unpacking, and day two was going around. So I needed to find some locations to put the advertisements in. And like I said, it could be anything from, we ended up with they have a minor league baseball team in Billings,
Okay.
a single A team for the Cincinnati Reds. So we ended up in there. We ended up at the hockey rink for like the general public. We ended up in the big arena, which would be out there is comparable to like Amsoil Arena here, And so, and of course, like I said, restaurants and nightclubs, bars, fitness centers were good, like health clubs,
Okay.
were good. And so that was day one, was just introducing myself and trying to, and again, remember, I parachuted in. I knew nobody.
Yeah.
I knew the family I lived with, one relationship with the hockey team that was from previous, the head coach had already moved on by then. I mean, it was, 6-7 years. So, so I had to just kind of go in, and I shook a lot of hands and got, kind of thrown out of a lot of places, people laughing at me like, what are you talking about? That'll never work. And, I thought it was gonna be a lot easier. I'll tell you that, because I had seen it in Minnesota and it had been here for a long time, but it hadn't been there. And
Okay.
And if looking back, if I would have known how tough it was going to be, I may not have done it, but I was a little bit naive, which I think could be good for an entrepreneur. A little naivety is good, because you don't know what you don't know.
Yeah.
And so you just, and I was all in, so I was jumping, like I said, I was parachuting in, so I was all in, so I had to make it work. And
Yeah.
and we
So,
just kept
so
on.
what was your pitch? Like, how did you structure it? What was the incentive for the business? What did that look like?
Okay, so I had, like I said, I had the one contact at the AJ Indoor, and I said, hey, I'm 99% sure I asked him if he could send me a frame, and he did. And so, and with some advertisements in it. That is what happened, because I had some beautiful, I remember one was a Lion Kugel's Honey Weiss with a bee on it, and
So you had some
I
mock-ups
had a
done.
mock-up, yeah.
Yep.
So beautiful with a honeycomb. It was a beautiful ad, and then I think it was one with a car dealership. They sent me a few, and so I'd walk in with this frame, this picture frame, like, hey, this is what I do. I wanna come, and I wanna basically give you some sort of value, some sort of rent, to hang up these
Posters.
these posters / frames in your mainly in your restrooms, and like I said, some and some were glossy eyed, but some had seen people in Billings had been to Denver or to Spokane or to Seattle or what have you, so they had seen them, but there were plenty of that hadn't, and I remember the first day I was there, a week, 10 days, and it was a nice brewery downtown, Montana Brewing Company. I believe it's still there, and he was like he said yes. He was the first guy, and as an entrepreneur,
Yeah.
it was just like
It's your first sale.
I don't
Like,
think I
that's a
could.
big
I
deal.
couldn't. And back then, no cell phones,
Yeah.
So, well, there were, but I didn't have one. I couldn't afford one, so I think I couldn't wait to run home and call a couple buddies and call my wife and say, I got my first location. Like, yeah, this is it. $1 million is coming in a month. So,
Right.
But I was very excited, and it was a great place.
Yeah.
I mean, it was a like, I knew advertisers would be interested in being at the brewery.
Okay. Great. So now you had your first location, right? And was it like a percentage of whatever the ads revenue that came in, or how did you structure it?
That's what we were going to give them a percentage of the ad revenue that came in, and then over time, as it evolved, and I found one of my mentors, Jack Thompson, was a big mentor. That's when my business really grew. And if any entrepreneurs that are listening, and maybe we'll talk more about this later, but the biggest thing you can do is find a great mentor, and Jack does the indoor advertising around here on the range, and
Okay.
as a fact, I think he had an insurance agent that he was using, or was a client that I was using, and someone they got to talking, and then he called me out of the blue, and we ended up going to lunch and met each other, and we're still good friends, to this day. But he was my mentor, and And he said, well, yeah, you can pay rent and all this stuff like cash, but also if you can get hold of anything of value, like a tickets of something or whatever, I mean,
Oh,
you
to
can
give
trade,
to
then
the
you exactly,
okay,
then
to
you
give
can
to the
pay
business owner.
rent with maybe gift cards from some other place. You get gift cards to one place, they get, so it was a lot of cash rents, but then go get some. I mean, there was a Red Lodge ski resort. We ended up with, by the time we were, in our 6th year, I mean, we had a lot of what we called trade. I mean, we had gift cards. We had, like I said, Red Lodge is the ski mountain. We had Red Lodge passes. I had passes to every, the Billings Bulls hockey team, the Mustangs, baseball team, the Billings Outlaws. They had the arena football. It was those games were very, very exciting. I had tickets to that. Every golf course, I had golf passes. So
the businesses that were advertising with you would also just give you like
yeah,
two
well,
free
they
tickets
instead
or
of
something.
cash, in some case, I'd say let's do a cash comp deal type thing. So they would be
Okay.
cash and trade. You know what I
Okay.
mean? So or something like that. And so yeah, so we were just always trying to make a deal. Somehow, whether, like I said, whether it was cash or trade, and then you just figured out, all that was currency in one way or the other, and then that's it. You just had to figure out how you're going to spend it.
Yeah. Okay.
So a lot of
So
wheeling
you
and dealing.
grew it, and you had people putting in the ads for you as well at some point.
Yeah, so the goal was, like I said, it was wide open there. When I started, I had a competitor ended up moving in, but when I started in 2001, so the idea was I kind of got Billings going, and then what I wanted to do was be able to get some state money, so I knew I needed to go across the state. And if you look on a map, Montana's pretty big. So the nearest town that I felt was worth working was Bozeman, 2 hours away. And that's like going 80 on the freeway on I-90.
Okay.
And
So
then,
long ways for you to go
yes, and then
yourself,
3
yeah.
hours to Great Falls, 4 hours to Helena, 5 or 5.5 to Missoula. But I did open up all these markets over time. And then, what was your question?
I was. That's a great question. What was my question?
I don't know. Anyway, I talk about expanding. Anyway.
Oh yeah. How did you scale it?
Oh yeah,
to-
So
yeah.
then so that's what so we went to all the towns. Oh, you're asking about employees. That's what it was. So I grew,
Yep.
and then I hired a maintenance person in each town to kind of go, because it's indoors, so people can touch them, right? So they can ride on them, or they can
Mess
vandalize them in
yeah.
some way. So
Yeah.
you wanted people going in and out of the location. So every so we had a guy in Billings, had a gal in Great Falls, had a guy in Bozeman, a guy in Helena, and a guy and gal kind of changed off in Missoula. So that part I didn't have to worry about. I concentrated on, my job was to drive revenue, or to get locations.
Okay.
Essentially, yeah.
Okay. And how often were you changing the ads out?
Well, again, good mentor. At first, I was kind of willing to take any deal, So, I mean, sometimes I had to change stuff monthly or every couple months. And then he kind of sat me down and said, Roger, you're doing a lot of work. Why don't you try to do some longer contracts, 6 months, year. Then you're not, you're saving yourself so much time and effort. And, because like I say, you got to print them and you got to get them to the, ship them up or get them. And then you're kind of taking inventory every month of, okay, what ads are where and how much space do I have in XYZ restaurant and ABC bar and, the golf course over there. So like if they're up, they're up, and so at first we were changing them a lot, but as as my business evolved, it was a lot less.
Okay.
I was trying to stick to like 6 month and if, it varied, if there was enough money in the deal, then, if they wanted to do 3 months, we'll do 3 months,
Right.
kind of thing. And that's
Right.
what I was talking about, growing through the state. Then we ended up getting like the Montana Lottery, and we ended up getting the Montana Department of Transportation for some like safe and sober stuff around the holidays. And those were shorter campaigns, but they were statewide, so they were bigger campaigns, so it made it worth it. So we did those.
Okay. And so you wanted to go on a statewide level because then you knew you'd have the locations to be able to say, and here's what I can do for you?
Exactly. I mean, it's like,
Okay.
all these markets, we ended up in Butte late, just a handful of places in Butte also. But yeah, it was, you can come to us and hit the whole state,
Yeah.
we're your one-stop shop. And I think that's where we had a little bit of a leg on our like I said, a competitor moved into Missoula and Bozeman, and a competitor also moved into Helena. And I think what differentiated us from them was one-stop shop, and we can get you all these, all these markets, and we had traffic flows from the different, when I'd go to a location, so what's your estimated monthly traffic? How many people do you serve, or what have you? And so, we could take that big number and say, and I can't remember what it was now, whatever, there's a million people a month pass through all these locations, whatever. And so I think, like I said, again, that's what kind of differentiated us.
So you had the numbers to be able to say, this is like the flow of people, and this is the percentage that will see the ad.
Yeah, this is kind of the traffic that.
Right.
Yeah. We had the traffic numbers, just estimates, but it gave people, and like I said, most people could kind of relate. They said, whatever. Fuddruckers, Fuddruckers, Perkins, most people have been to a Perkins. They kind of have an idea, most people there had been to Perkins multiple times, and so they knew, I think anybody that's listening kind of relate, like you kind of know what the traffic is at a Perkins, right? You kind of, you know who it is, and you kind of know they're usually, how often you drive by a Perkins, there's the parking lot's empty, right? So I think there was just, the advertisers could use their instincts just a little bit too and know that, what
there's
kind of
traffic
what they were,
there,
exactly.
and people are going to see what you have. Yeah. Okay. No, yeah. Okay. So then how did you get that ready to exit? Because then it sounds like you did it again in Chicago. So
Yeah. So
what was the thought process there? Walk me through it.
So it was more than just one thing. So so I was, getting closer and closer with my Jack, my mentor that was helping me, and we just, kept in contact, and we were talking more and more, and he had some stuff going on in the Twin Cities, and he found out about an opportunity in Chicago that he thought maybe we should jump on, and we ended up jumping on with a couple other guys. I'll do a lot of name dropping so we can get a lot of people to listen, but my buddy Dan Vidmar, my buddy Bill Garrity, and so we were going to look at going down to Chicago and doing this out in the suburbs, kind of around O'Hare Airport. And so that, combined with our son was born in August of 2005, and my wife's got two brothers. They're in Nashwauk. My older brother was in Hibbing. My younger brother was actually in Montana at the time, but he was kind of looking at moving back, and it was just like, we're kind of out here on our own. It'd be different if her family was spread out and my family was spread out. Someone's in Nashville, someone's in Austin, someone's, But when everybody's there and you're not, it's a little like, what I mean? There's one piece to the puzzle that's missing. So we kind of started thinking about it. Like, so we had one of the reasons too was just at that point, we just kind of, we hit that 5-6 year mark, whatever, and we just had a lot of momentum. It was getting easier to get good quality advertisers, people that actually paid their bills, and there was just time. Just sometimes time helps, and so we had a lot of momentum, and the opportunity in Chicago got richer and richer, and I talked to my wife and said, we're still not quote unquote home, but we're
at
4
least
hours
back
closer.
in the
We're
Midwest,
4 hours closer to home. And this could be a big opportunity, and bigger because the market's bigger, right? And we had a chance of some national stuff as far as revenue, and so we put her up, and it sold. It would be December of 2005. I think it was up for just a couple months. It wasn't
really
long,
okay.
Yeah, because we had good revenue. It was good. Yeah, business was running good. We had good margins. We had good. We had good contracts. We had, like I said, great locations. So it was ready to go.
Yeah.
So thank God, knock on wood.
Yeah. Okay. So then you went to Chicago, and were you doing all of the business? Like you were opening the market there too, or did you have people working with you on that one?
Yeah. So the way we structured it was, Bill Garrity was doing the same thing down in Raleigh, Durham. So he was kind of more just a silent partner and used for information and consulting. And then Jack and Dan, they were in the Twin Cities. So Jack kind of oversaw some of the national stuff. Dan kind of handled a lot of the back end office stuff. So I was the one on the ground there. So yeah, same thing. I had to lease the locations, make the sales, and then we were also branched off and started doing advertising above the gas pumps there.
Okay, tell me about that. How did you get into it, and what was the opportunity?
Well, and I had actually heard about it while I was in Montana and dabbled in it just a little bit, and found a little bit of success there, but only a year and a half, 2 years, before we sold and left. But that was a nice addition to our portfolio once we went to Chicago, because as I was going to tell you in the pre-chat, many communities have restrictions now on outdoor billboards. Everyone drives down the road, you see those billboards along the outside of along the highway. Those are called outdoor billboards, and they're becoming extinct. They're not existing ones can typically be repaired, but you start going to many areas of suburbia America, and you will not find an outdoor billboard. They are outlawed. I don't really know why. I don't know if it's the light that bothers me. I don't know what it is, but they are outlawed. So there was an opportunity because companies, whatever, let's pick a Verizon Wireless or somebody wants to advertise in a billboard fashion, but they can't get the outdoor. So then they're starting to look for alternatives like indoor or gas pump or what have you. So all of a sudden then we could go to advertise with a little portfolio and say, hey, we can get you a little of this with the indoor, and we get you a little of this with 55 gas stations. We'll get you 100 indoor locations. What do you think? And we could package the deal. So that was, it was just kind of a natural extension, maybe, I guess, a little bit,
Yeah, well, and then I was just thinking too, as a business owner, you have a bathroom, right? Or a lot of storefronts do. And also as a gas station owner, you have that ad space. And then why would you not look for that opportunity? Right. Because it's not really taking up any more space, and you're getting a cut of it, right?
Yeah.
And so it's a win-win, I think.
That's what I always thought, but it was tougher to convince. And then, well,
yeah, I could see that.
On the indoor side sometimes, and something like, I just, if you were going to put it in their bathrooms, I just spent a bunch of money on my, we just remodeled, and I don't, and then you go back 2 years later, and there's, after, a couple of people punched holes in the walls, and girls were writing graffiti on the doors, then they're more up, but so there was a resistance. But on the gas station end, that was a little tougher because the majors, your Exxons, your Phillips, your Shell,
you have to get a higher up approval, probably.
Well, yeah, they wanted that space. And so if it was a corporate store, you weren't going to get it. But if you had a franchisee, they wanted, they didn't care. And we didn't typically take up all the spots. We might, if there were 6 gas pumps, or 3 gas pumps, and there's one frame up there where there's an ad on both sides, right? So 2, 4, 6. So we might just put 3 ads up, and then, Marathon Oil gets the other 3 or something like that. So that's how we kind of got around that. But that space was valuable for, like I said, the oil companies themselves, And even some stores had their own stuff, come in the store and buy.
Right.
M&Ms.
So they want to get some stuff on there. Yeah. Yeah, and now they have those TV screens in a lot of them.
See, that's gone digital now too.
Yeah.
Exactly. Like the shortstops have the screens now. So, yeah, that's the way the world's going. It's getting to be digital.
To the point, my kids will be like, "Shh, I'm watching the ad." I'm like, "I'm trying to pump gas."
Well, and that's a big barrier to entry. Like I said, you asked about the the cost when I went out, and I was like, well, it's not going to cost much. But now, I mean, you could still do the.
Yeah, but you have to get an entire little digital screen.
But yeah, if you want to get into the digital side, you've got to, because most of those are shot in, obviously wirelessly. So you got the dish.
Yep.
And you got to run a lot of cable, through the building, and that's a big process. So I'm, again, knock on wood, I didn't have to deal with any of that, and nor would I want to. So,
yeah. Okay, and then Chicago, then you sold that one as well.
Yeah. So Chicago, it just wasn't. It wasn't really working. The business side was okay, but it just wasn't really working really well for my wife and I. We, like I said, we had my son in Montana, so we got there when he was, 5, 6 months old. So you drop, again, we parachuted in, didn't know anybody. We lived up in Schaumburg, beautiful place. We liked a lot of the amenities of the big city, but it was hard to meet people because we had the little one, and we couldn't really hire a sitter per se because we didn't know anyone.
Yeah.
You know, we didn't know, and so we, you know, kind of talked to the partners and that, you know, and we said, well, we can stick it out, but if we have an opportunity, you know, let's exit. Well, we just kind of got some feelers out there, and we found a guy that was, again, that wasn't long. It was maybe 90 days.
Really?
And
okay.
so we were in, and we were able to sell that. And we were in Chicago it was darn near just a year. We got there in late April, and I know we were back.
So you were there for a year. You started this company, got it off the ground. And how many locations did you have by the time you were done?
Oh, geez, that's a good question. And we had actually started when I was in Montana still. I actually made 2 trips from Montana to Chicago.
Oh, okay. Okay.
So those were 2-dayers in a little Honda Accord. But, boy, we had, and, you know, we just kind of carved out an area, you know. We didn't try to cover all of Chicago. It would have been impossible. But I think we had upwards of, I'd say like 55 bars and restaurants, and I'd say like 75 gas stations.
Wow.
So,
okay.
you know, up in that northwestern, you know, kind of northwest of O'Hare Airport is where we were kind of concentrated.
Now I'm going to have to look when I go to O'Hare next time.
Yeah.
I'm like, going to
Hoffman
go
Estates and Schaumburg.
ask my Uber driver to take me to the gas station quick.
Yeah, you go look around and say, hey, I know the guy that got that started. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, wow. Okay. No, that's a lot of really cool stuff. So what would you say if someone were going to try to do this now? What advice would you have for them? And what resources would you recommend they really know as a business owner?
Well, again, like I said, the mentor thing. I think what I learned the hard way was just trying to do stuff by myself, and not purposely. I think I was just too, again, naive and just too young and just a little bit too dumb to ask. You know, because what I've learned and what I like now, what I learned is, you know, people like to help out young entrepreneurs. And as an entrepreneur myself, when I have a young entrepreneur walk in, I want to help that person out too.
Well,
You know,
and I mean, like, look at your example. Like, you have somebody that heard you were out doing something. They knew you were a hard worker. And they're like, I'm going to mentor this guy.
Yeah.
Because then, as an older entrepreneur, you have another opportunity come up. Now you have somebody to do the legwork because you don't maybe want to do it all yourself, and then you can go into another opportunity together.
You're exactly right.
So, like, I mean, I feel like a big piece of mentorship as well is like proving you can work hard, you know, to your mentor. I guess.
Yeah, right.
And I think that's a huge piece. But then if you are not mentoring anyone, like, here's a tip for listeners, you should be, because that's where you're gonna find those next people that you can really lean on when you want to expand or do whatever in the future.
Right. Yep. Lean on trust. You know, you can trust them, and it's especially now. I mean, I think every generation says, well, this generation doesn't work as hard as my generation, but I'm starting to feel that way. You know, I'm starting to feel like, I don't know, this generation doesn't seem to work as hard. So, but yeah, you know, so like you were saying, you know, if somebody was to get into it, but yeah, find a good mentor in any business, whether it's this or anything, but find a good mentor. And I think, like I said, my biggest resource was really just, I committed, and I was all in. Like I said, I'm like, you know, I was focused on this. I'm going to make this work. This is what I'm going to do. So it's just kind of that, so many words for it: hard work, tenacity. Like I said, I was a little bit naive, you know, so instead of saying, gosh, this would be a lot easier to go across the street and fill out a job like application to do this, I decided that, no, I'm going to make this indoor advertising company work. And so that's what I did.
I'm just going to like throw out a shout out to your wife, letting you move to Montana by yourself.
Yeah. Her and I, I was there I got there in April, and then she was schooled. So then she moved out in June, but we were still stayed at the house with those, you know, with my hockey family.
I was wondering about that.
And then we did end up buying a house in late September of 2002. But, you know, but she's, definitely along for the ride. She's been a trooper. So we did that. And then, like I said, our son's, hey, you want to go to Chicago? So then, you know, driving that U-Haul from Billings, Montana to Chicago. And then that was just an apartment situation, you know, just her, I, my son, and the dog. And then she was pregnant with number 2 when we moved. And then back up here, and just, I think every entrepreneur's spouse, there's, I guess, quote unquote, like a price that they pay. You know what I mean? There's unpredictability in income. There's there's crazy ideas. There's, you know, in my case, there can be a lot of intensity. You know, and so I'm sure maybe you should do that's what you do next, entrepreneur spouses support group.
Yeah.
You know,
I'm sure my husband would need that. So tell me a little bit about where people can find you, because you also have a podcast.
So now I've luckily been able to kind of transfer some of the skills I learned in selling advertising to doing a couple of podcasts. I'm on one more frequently than the other, but we formed a company. It's called Goat Sports Media, LLC. And right now we have 2 shows that we do, you know, YouTube, Facebook podcast. One is called The One to Go Show, and that covers like dirt track racing in a regional fashion. So North Dakota, South Dakota, Minnesota, Wisconsin, a little bit of Southern Canada, a little bit of Northern Iowa. And that one we just celebrated the 4th birthday into year 5. That was just right around Halloween. And then I've got one more locally called the Tea with Miss McGill Show that we cover.
Wait, say it slower again. What was it?
The Tea with Miss McGill Show.
Okay.
It's a line from a hockey movie. So
okay.
But that one covers high school hockey kind of across kind of in the Arrowhead region of northern Minnesota. And I say kind of because we do cover Little Warroad, Rosewitz hockey, you have to, and Brainerd, Bemidji. But yeah, having a lot of fun with that, and I, like I said, luckily, you know, obviously we have some advertisers, and so that was kind of came natural for me. I was able to do some of that, and it's been a lot of fun. And I think that if there's a young entrepreneur, and this I guess relates to your previous question a little bit, I kind of think it's 2023. The iPhone/smartphone's not going away, and I realized it. Well, 4.5, 5 years ago, you kind of have to have a digital life in some way. Mm-hmm. You know what I mean? I mean, there's, you know, and that was the way I kind of came up with this was a combination of, you know, I'm watching my kids, they're teenagers now, but they were preteen then, and just, you know, how electronics are just a way of life for them. You know, I can get away from electronics. They can't as much. And I mean, we force them to, which they don't like, and then I had moved from Hibbing to Grand Rapids in 2015, but I maintained my office in Hibbing, and I was driving a lot, obviously, to get back and forth to the office. And I remember a friend of mine, Eric Bardo, had told me 2012 or 13 about podcasts. I'm like, a podcast? Am I not doing it? You know, I wish I would have. I should have, you know, been more inquisitive, because who knows where, you know, because back then there weren't as many, you know. Yeah. And so now, of course there are, but you know, when I started driving a lot, and I started listening to a lot of them, and that's when I thought, well, if I want a digital slice of the digital world and need to be involved in the digital world in some way, well, maybe a podcast. So like we started the One to Go Show, the racing one, and it was just a podcast for about the first 6 months. It wasn't until COVID and the lockdowns we started to do Zooming and then throwing it on YouTube and Facebook. But that was like the original baby. I'm not on that one as much. I'd like to get back to it. It's just a kind of a time thing.
Yeah.
You know,
so if you're interested in those topics, you should definitely tune into those channels for sure.
Oh, for sure. Yeah. For sure. Yeah.
Yeah, that's awesome.
Yeah.
So the gawk portion of this episode, I know that you were going to tell me a little bit about a tow truck driver.
Yeah. So in Montana, I don't know, year 2 or 3, you know, I'd go to Perkins, you know, and so, well, we're here. I might as well go in the men's room and check out the boards. And there'd be this towing company's business card. And then the next place, and it was the same towing company. And so, of course, eventually I called the guy and said, hey, you know what value is here. This is great. You know, you should advertise it. Oh, yeah, maybe I will get back to you. Of course, he never did. But the business cards did not cease to stop showing up at various locations all over.
Sneaking them in.
Yeah, sneaking in the free ad. So, but yeah, that was kind of comical, I guess.
Well, thank you for being with me today.
Well, yeah, and thank you for what you're doing, and congratulations on your success and growing and keeping everything going, and you're doing a great job. And I'm glad I found out about you. I mean, I'm like I moved into to this building, otherwise I would not have known.
Yeah, for those of you who are listening, Roger is my neighbor in my building.
Yeah. So we're
for my office.
Yeah,
so.
we're friendly neighbors. So, but yeah, congrats to you, and I hope you're having fun with it. And like I said,
Absolutely,
best wishes for continued growth and success.
Yeah, and if you enjoyed this episode, you should give it a review on Spotify or Apple Podcasts, and we'll see you next time.